to the UFC 272 pre-show right here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I'm your host, Johnathan, aka 3PieceCombo, and I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Johan Blanco. You can find him on Twitter at Blanco Fights. And let's get right into it, man. We have an absolutely loaded card with UFC 272 coming up this weekend, headlined by the whole reason my name is 3PieceCombo, Jorge Masvidal, taking on Colby Covington in a grudge match. And that's going to be a very, very nice press conference tomorrow. I cannot wait to watch that press conference, and I think the fight's going to be very exciting as well. Co-main event, we got RDA, Rafael Dos Anjos, taking on Renato Moicano, telling in on short notice. Islam, and then we're going back and forth on Twitter. I was really hoping for that fight to happen. Unfortunately, that one didn't pull through. Edson Barbosa taking on the up-and-comer Bryce Mitchell. I think that's an excellent matchup in the featherweight division. One of my other favorite fighters, Kevin Holland, back in the cage, taking on somebody who's not so much a heavy wrestler like Vettori and Brunson. He's taking on Alex Cowboy Oliveira, which will be a fun matchup. And to open the card, we got Sergey Spivak taking on Greg Hardy. Greg Hardy, for some reason, continues to make these UFC pay-per-view cards, but maybe we'll see another knockout as well. We'll also get you covered. We're going to cover you with some prelims as well. I know over the last couple shows, we've only been doing the main card, but we got some prelim action for you, and we'll even touch on some early prelims. So we're going to break down Jalen Turner versus Jamie Malarkey, Bahirina Rodriguez versus Yan Jiaonan, Nikolay Negumereanu versus Kennedy and Zechuku. We're going to break down Mirna Moroz versus Mirna Agapova. And then in the early prelims, we got two Khabib prodigies that we want to take on. His cousin, Umar Nurmagomedov, taking on Brian Boom Kelleher. And then we got Tim Elliott taking on another one, 13-1, I believe, Tagir Ullan Becca. So let's get right into it, man. Tagir Ullan Becca, we're going to work our way from the bottom and work our way up into that main event. So let's start right at the bottom. Like I said, Tagir Ullan Becca versus Tim Elliott. This is a pretty good matchup, right? Tagir is one of those guys coming out. I said 13-1. He's actually 14-1 right now, but he's a dominant 125-pounder. And Tim Elliott's a veteran of the cage. He's had 31 fights here professionally, and he's another one of those guys that not hot or cold, but he's always kind of winning and losing. 2 and 3 in his last 5. Not really doing so much. So, Johan, you had this time of breaking down this fight, man. What did you see from both of these fighters, and then who do you think gets the win?
Well, I'm going to start with the blue corner. I'm going to start with the Khabib prodigy in Tagir Ullan Becca because the dude is a beast. I mean, anybody that comes from that Dagestani camp has a phenomenal foundation and a phenomenal coach to learn from. Obviously, we can't talk about Khabib prodigy without talking about the wrestling and, the way that they're able to set everything up. But one thing that's unique about Tagir Ullan Becca is that he's not afraid to trade on the feet. He's pretty long for the flyweight division, so he's able to use range and kind of like gauge distance and also even close distance. So he's able to do both, set distance and put pressure and close the gap if he needs to go for a takedown or anything like that. He's also very, very good on his back. He has a few submissions off his back. He has a really nice guillotine, really nice triangle. He's one of those, how wrestlers are, start to panic off his back. That's not the case with Tagir. Tagir is good off his back. He's good on top. And, overall, he has a very solid wrestling game. That being said, his striking has been improving with each and every fight. And as for Tim Elliott, I mean, the one thing about fighters that is very hard for them to do is fight freely. And Tim Elliott is one of the most free-flowing fighters in the UFC, if not the most. He's very unorthodox. He fights like he doesn't care. Like he doesn't care what he's about to do. It's almost like a video game to him, where he'll fight. If he's getting taken down, he'll do like a Uranagi roll to kind of reverse the situation or something like that. And just the way that he sets up strikes, it's not a traditional way. Sometimes he'll start off with a spinning back kick. Sometimes he'll do a wheel kick. He is a very free fighter and very loose, and it kind of messes up opponents' rhythm and kind of timing in terms of what to expect from Tim Elliott, because what you expect is the unexpected. And in that case, this is a very interesting matchup because you have a veteran who's fought for the title, who's fought, the top flyweights throughout his career, who's kind of getting to the end of his career, or not the end, but the latter part of his career, against a top prospect who is just rising in the ranks in that flyweight division. Now, this is very interesting, but I would have to go with the Khabib prodigy in Tagir Ulanbekov. I think that he has a lot of momentum going. I think that Khabib has done an excellent job with all his fighters, just kind of prepping them for whatever style matchup comes their way, even if it's something that's as unorthodox as Tim Elliott. I think he will be able to smother that early storm and smother that creativity, put on the pressure and kind of wear him down. And, I see it going the distance, but I could also see a late third round submission finish for Tagir Ulanbekov. But overall, I think Tagir is going to take this one.
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think Khabib as a coach is also still undefeated. He's been doing a phenomenal job taking over for his father Abdulmanap's legacy, taking over as kind of the mainstay, the father of the camp, the big brother for everybody, filling that gap, and he's just done a phenomenal job. So watching some of these fights from these guys, I'm right there with you. I think Tagir gets it done, man. He's one of these guys you got to watch out for. 2-3 years down the line, right? He's going to be fighting for the title. I can almost guarantee it. He's just one of those guys. You can tell he has it. So I'm right there with you. So let's move on to the next Khabib prodigy, Brian Boom Kelleher, taking on Umar Nurmagomedov. And Umar is a very different style of Nurmagomedov. I mean, if you come in and you start watching his fights, the first thing you'll notice is just that he throws a lot of kicks, right? He's super, super kick heavy. I mean, the inside low kick, the super snappy question mark kick that he has as well. He has a beautiful teep kick, a beautiful front kick. He just does a lot of good things with his legs. And by doing that, he's able to keep the fight at his range. He's able to keep it far enough that you can't hurt him with your hands. But once you get close enough to where he hurts you, where you can hurt him with his hands, then he'll go ahead and he'll go for your hips. And that's how he'll really set up his takedowns. He'll get you thinking that he's going to strike. He'll get you defending kicks, and he'll even throw some boxing combinations in there. But once you start loading up on your shots and you start saying, hey, I can start timing these kicks, that's when he'll shoot for your hip, and that's when he'll take you down. And once he takes you down, he's someone who's very, very good at getting your back. I mean, this guy is literally like a backpack. He'll go ahead, he'll scramble around, roll around, and then once he grabs hold of your back, it's pretty much it. Even if it's not necessarily a finish right away, he's good at using that, transitioning over, getting onto the mount if you're just going to give up your back, and just transitioning back and forth into dominant positioning. Now, when he's on the feet, he also likes to switch his stance a lot, which I think helps his kick game too, because it keeps your opponent guessing from which leg is the kick coming from, and if he's going to throw his kick or is he switching his stance. So Umar does a very, very good job with that. Now, when it comes to Brian Boom Kelleher, another, just like Tim Elliott, kind of on the back end of his career, but he does have a lot of skills that have kept him around for a long time. One of those skills being that patented guillotine. I mean, he has 3 guillotines in the UFC. He has that really tight squeeze. So, I mean, we could see, and it's a far shot, but we could see Brian Kelleher, maybe faking Umar into taking a shot and grabbing hold of that head and jumping a ghillie. That's something that I really could see Brian trying to do, to maybe just throw Umar a little bit off. He has power, but he doesn't tend to throw on volume, right? He doesn't really throw a lot of punches. He just kind of throws and loads up and waits for the one. What you saw in that fight against Kevin Kroom, Kroom was just accumulating that volume on him, but Brian was just kind of waiting, loading up, and hitting those power shots, which did drop Kroom a couple times. So it shows the power that Brian Kelleher has. He does keep a high guard, which I think is going to be very good for helping him defend some of those kicks that Umar is going to throw. But he doesn't really defend the body. So when those kicks come to the other levels, it's going to be a lot harder for him to start guarding. Now, one thing that I noticed that he does too is he does a good job countering kicks with straight shots down the middle. Now, there was a couple times in Umar fights that those straight shots down the middle did connect, but it didn't put him out. So if Brian's able to connect with one of those shots down the middle and time one of those kicks perfectly with a shot, that could be something that we could see hurt Umar. But getting into the prediction of this fight, I just think this is a fight that we see Umar take over and dominate. Brian's a very, very good fighter. I want to give him the credit where credit is due, but Umar is just on another level. I mean, his striking is just going to be able to keep Brian at bay. Like I said, he doesn't use kicks, or doesn't use very much kicks. He tends to use everything with his boxing. So if Umar's in kickboxing range and Brian is boxing range, the strikes aren't going to be there. And for him to get in that range, he's going to have to present his hips, which is going to allow Umar to take him down. So I think Umar gets his fight done, man, and I think he gets it done by submission. I think he just shows how good that Dagestani wrestling is.
Yeah,
So
I definitely agree with you, man. Just like, you know, to see that, like, the one of the first fights on, you know, the early prelims, the last two fights are Khabib prodigies. It just shows like how far in a short period of time that Khabib has gone as a coach in terms of building these fighters up and stuff like that. And if you look at like his YouTube channel, you can see how involved he is with the entire process, like with the weight cuts and stuff like that. You see how involved he is and how strict and how important this is to him. In terms of Umar, man, Umar is nasty. I think that, again, just like Tajir, he is going to be someone to look out for in that featherweight division. And overall, I think this could be a showcase for him.
yeah, I do think this will be a showcase. I mean, this is going to be a showcase for a couple of Khabib prodigies, and this is going to be a showcase for Khabib as a coach as well. So that's going to be a fun match. Moving into the prelims, like I said, we gave you a little bit of early prelim magic there, which we don't typically do. But I think once we have some of these cards that are a little bit deeper, and we look at this, and if you imagine, I think it was UFC 200. You had guys like Dominic Reyes, you had guys like Charles Oliveira fighting in the prelims, fighting in the early prelims, right? That's what we're looking at now. That's what Umar Nurmagomedov, that's what Tajir Ullan Becca are. Those are guys that are going to be fighting for the title in, 2-3 years, or at least not, or if not being fighting for the title, being a top contender. So moving into the prelims, we got Maria Agapova versus Mirna Moroz. And this is a very interesting matchup because Moroz is actually Ukrainian. So this is something that might play into the mental part of this. And I actually interviewed Chris Mixon last week for the PFL, and he talked about how it just kind of helped put everything in perspective for him, how small the fight game is comparison to how the real world is. Like when real life going on, they're fighting for sport, but it does help focus them, and it helped him when he spoke to me. It helped him kind of just represent a little bit more. He wanted to, bear that flag a little bit more. And Mirna Moroz, she's a national boxing champion for Ukraine. She's a national boxing champion coach for Ukraine. The kickboxing and the boxing skills are there, right? She throws a lot of volume, but sometimes she doesn't necessarily connect, right? Her accuracy isn't all there, and she might throw in combinations, but she won't land all those punches in the combination. So this will be a good gauge to kind of see. We see some high-level fighters kind of use that kia and help influence the judge. That might be something that we can see in this fight, is that her just throwing a lot of volume, even if it doesn't connect, will help sway the judges with there. Her submissions off the back are pretty good as well, and she does a good job with the jab and the body work. Now, moving on to Maria Agapova, it's a very interesting fighter, right? Because she was coming in against Shayna Dobson. That was a fight where she was supposed to easily win that fight. She was a heavy favorite in that fight, but she just seemed to gas out in that first round, and after that, she was able to get taken down and she was able to get beaten up. But in the fight afterwards against Sabina Mazo, who was a top prospect, especially when it comes to boxing, she was able to get a third round submission. So she shows that she has the ability to kind of do a little bit of everything, right? She out volumed Sabina Mazo as well, which is something you don't expect her to do quite as much. But she was able to do that. She's coming in as a southpaw, and she seems to be a little more of the power striker in this matchup. I think we'll see Moroz go over a little more volume, and I think we'll see Agapova go a little more with the power. And with Agapova, she's aggressive with everything, right? She's kind of in your face with everything. That could be something that can play against her on the gas tank, right? If Moroz continues to make Maria Agapova just continue to pressure, do things, make her miss, that could be something that can weigh on her. Now, getting into the predictions in this fight, I'm going to have to go with Agapova. I think she's just a little more well-rounded, right? Moroz is a phenomenal striker. I think on the feet or in the boxing range, she might have a little bit of an advantage, and we might see the volume kind of pile up and that numbers start to skew this way. And I do want to say what's up to Austin Walker saying, bet your life savings. Yeah, man, I agree with that. Agapova, just so much more well-rounded. She's not as one-dimensional. And like I said, Moroz has those three submissions off of her back. But in the UFC, when you get in that position and you have somebody who's such a high level like Agapova, I don't think she's going to get submitted off her back. I want to say what's up to Cap for Life, gentlemen. Appreciate you joining us as well, my man. And so I'm going to go with Mira Agapova. I'm going to say she gets it done by decision. I think she gets some solid top control for at least 2 of the rounds, and I think she gets the win. Now, moving on to the next fight. This is another interesting matchup because we have Kennedy and Zechuku, who had that fight against the teammate of Israel Adesanya, and that kind of helped put him on the map, right? That was a fight he was supposed to lose, but he ended up winning that fight in the second round. And he's fighting somebody in Nikolay Negumereanu, who's coming in not the hottest prospect right now, but it's 2-1 overall, having 2 straight victories, coming in trying to make this the third in a row. Talk to me about what you saw in there in the film, and tell me who you think gets the win.
Yeah, so firstly, with Nikolay Negumereanu, first off, I need you to change your last name. I can't keep saying that the entire time, but it's okay. Overall, he has a very well-rounded game, but it is grappling-based first. He's a very strong fighter. What he likes to do, he likes to put constant pressure, and he likes to, kind of just smother opponents, but not in a way where it's like John Fitch, where it's just like he's just trying to point fight. It's like he's trying to wear them down, so that way he's able to kind of transition and get to top mount seamlessly, so he can prop up and try to go for a TKO stoppage. Because a few of his finishes are on the ground when he's in full mount. That's where he dominates the most, is when he's in full mount and he's grounding and pounding. Shout out Mark Coleman, the Godfather, for that. But he still has a growing stand-up game. It's still kind of raw. He's still kind of stiff. He still fights with his hands a little lower than they should be, which could be bad in terms of being susceptible to getting caught with hooks or even, straight punches. But headshots, definitely needs to keep his guard up, because he's not as fluent on the feet yet, and he's still kind of stiff, and he keeps his head on the center line, which is not a good thing. Usually top fighters are able to keep their head off the center line. So he's still trying to work on that. But one thing that he does have on the feet, he has dynamite in hands. He has powerful, heavy hands. I wouldn't say they're the cleanest shots, but he likes to swing. And that's one thing. If he catches you, it could be a problem, because it's either you're going out or you're going down, and he's going to be on top of you, and then you cannot get off of him. And that's one thing you have to realize with Nikolay. I'm not going to say your last name again, because change it. But with Kennedy and Zechuku, he is a stand-up fighter. He is. He was on the Contender Series. I remember him. I watched him briefly, but then I had to refresh for this show. He has very powerful hands too, but he's a little more polished on the feet. So I would say this is kind of like a striker versus grappler matchup, where their preference is opposite of each other. He likes to put forward pressure, but it's a very patient forward pressure. He kind of likes to pick his shots. He doesn't like to. What he lacks in kind of volume punches, he makes up for with accuracy. And when he's accurate, you're gone. You're lights out. There was a fight in the Apex. I believe it was against Carlos Uberg, where he knocked him out cleanly. He's one of those guys that he really just can, put you out with any shot he throws, especially with his power hand. And in the light heavyweight division, that could be all it takes, to kind of make your name for yourself. He was on a 4-fight winning streak until he got knocked out with some elbows against Dan Un Jung. But overall, in this fight, this is very tough, because I want to say Kennedy and Zechuku, because I feel like he's the better fighter overall. But the problem is, I don't think that he has the strength advantage. And if Nikolay is able to kind of close that gap and kind of cut the lead foot and kind of smother that to get the takedowns, I think it'll be a long night for Kennedy. But I think that Kennedy will be able to expose the lack of proper stand-up defense and proper head movement of Nikolay. He might be able to catch him, and we can see either a first round or second round stoppage. So I'm going to go with Kennedy and Zechuku with this one.
Yeah, man, that's a good pick. And shout out Bobby Ramos with that lackluster offense, lackluster defense. Bottom line, Bobby Ramos. Pretty sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, I'm right there with you, man. It's a very, very close matchup. It's a perfect striker versus grappler. But the thing is, Kennedy's just so long. I think he's going to be able to use those lengths, to at least dig some of those underhooks and keep it standing. And he's a very patient fighter, too, right? He's not somebody who's super wild. He's very, very calculated. So I do agree with your pick. I think Kennedy's there, but Nikolay's a live, super, super live fighter in this one. Now, this was a fight that you specifically asked to break down. So I'm going to give you the pleasure of go ahead and getting all the sauce in it. Marina Rodriguez versus Yan Xiaonan. Now, I think personally this should have replaced the Greg Hardy versus Sergey Spivak fight on the main card. That's just me personally. Break it to me, Johan. What do you see in this fight?
I mean, Marina Rodriguez was on the main card of a Conor McGregor fight. Doesn't that deserve to be on the main card of Colby Covington Jorge Masvidal fight? But it's not me. I'm not the booker, and I'm not Sean Shelby or Dana White, so I can't do that. But this is number 3 versus number 4 in the women's strawweight division. I am so excited because, one, Marina Rodriguez is going – but after Carla Esparza, Marina Rodriguez should be the next in line for a title shot. This girl is nasty. Probably some of the best stand-up in that strawweight division, and that's including girls like Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Rose Namajunas and Zhang Wei Li. She might be in that conversation. She is just what she's able to do. She's so snappy. She puts constant pressure, and one thing I love about Marina Rodriguez's game is that she's able to cut angles offensively and defensively. And what I mean by that is she's able to cut angles in order to, put her in a better position to land her significant strikes, which is the left hook and the right uppercut. When she's able to, put her lead leg outside of the other person's lead leg, she kind of makes it hard for people to kind of go on the outside, and that opens it up for her uppercuts. And when she puts her lead leg on the inside of people's lead leg, it makes it easier for her to land the left hook. And that's one thing I notice a lot from her. But another thing is she has very good, takedown defense. We saw it against Mackenzie Dern. Mackenzie Dern primarily, probably the best jiu-jitsu in that strawweight division. She's a very decorated person, and she was able to kind of neutralize that game and kind of pick her apart on the feet. And, she held her own. She is a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, kind of an underrated game, but that's not where she likes to keep it. She uses her ground game to kind of keep things on the feet. Similar to Chuck Liddell, she's able to just, use it as a defense so that way it sets up her stand-up. And I love the fact that she just puts constant pressure, and it's pressure where she's looking for the finish. And if she has to, she can go she can go the distance because she's gone 25 minutes twice now. So she has the gas tank, and she's an animal. But Yao Xiaonan is also an animal. That girl is a beast. And one thing that could be a problem for Marina is speed, because Yao Xiaonan is lightning quick, one of the quickest people in that division. And one thing that, if Marina Rodriguez is not, careful of, she doesn't have a high guard either. It's like a traditional guard, but it's not high enough to where she can, block everything. If she's not, one thing she has to look out for is that lead kick. I'm not talking about leg kick. I'm talking about lead head kick, because she throws a lead side kick to the head. You know how flexible you have to be. I was in Taekwondo for about 14 years. I can't do that as fast as she can. She is so fast with it. And not only that, but she's another person that loves to keep things on the feet. And it's fights like these are so exciting because you're going to see fireworks. It's like Yao Xiaonan is a girl that can also, put pressure, but she can also fight off her back foot. She doesn't mind, the fight coming to her. And I'm not going to say she's the best counter fighter, because I would give that to Marina. But what she's able to do is she's able to kind of fight off her back foot and kind of deal with that pressure, keep her composure, and fight kind of how Justin Gaethje says is like calculated chaos. And that's one thing I love about this fight. Now, in terms of who I have winning, it's kind of hard because you can make a case for both of these women, winning this fight. This one is really tough. I don't know who I like as a fighter. I want to go off kind of analysis, and I don't know, because I still think Marina Rodriguez is going to win, but it's a tough one. I think it could be a split decision. I really definitely think it could be a split decision because they're both very good on the feet. They're very good. I think that Marina Rodriguez is the harder puncher. I think she's the better counter fighter. And I think that in terms of like overall stand-up game, it's her is hers for the making. But at the same time, the physical attributes and the timing goes to Yan Xiaonan. That's for sure. She's the faster fighter, and I think that if she's able to, connect very early and start off strong in terms of, getting her strikes off fast and, kind of picking her apart on the feet, then it could really dilute Marina's timing and also kind of her game plan, because then now she's going to have to worry about, kind of timing like her defense. And that's one thing that is hard to pick. That's why it's kind of like a give me fight. Like you don't know, it's a pick 'em fight. You don't know who to pick because it's like they match up so easily. There's some strength and some weaknesses with both of them.
Yeah, man, that's one of the closest fights, and I can see that potentially being a sleeper pick for fight of the night. Like I really can see that just being a fight that can just go the distance, be an all-out war, like a Joanna versus I'm drawing a blank out right now. You know exactly what I'm talking about. The Joanna fight versus Weili Zhang. That would like come something kind of like that, right? So just both of these women's beautiful striking and showing the evolution of women's MMA. And I honestly think it's a little bit disrespectful for them to be on the prelims. Like I do think they should get that main card rub. And both of these women could be, stars in that division. They both have the power. They both have the ability. It's like they're exciting fighters to watch. So why not? Why not? But I'm right there with you, man. This was a tough one to pick. I wasn't in charge of picking this one, so I'll let you pick that one, and I'll stick with your pick. Let's get into the main the main prelim fight. We have Jamie Malarkey taking on Jalen, the Tarantula Turner, and Jalen Turner, one of the more interesting fighters, right? He's coming in just as a person. I mean, he had the spider when he came in with the weigh-in, and I don't think he allowed anybody to. Or I don't think he told anybody about that. But overall, I mean, he's a good striker, right? He comes in and he's a little more volume heavy. He'll snipe you out from a distance, and he uses that range just beautifully. I mean, he's 6'3". I'm not sure exactly what the reach advantage is on Jamie Malarkey, but he has a couple inches on him. Looking at it right now, he has a 3-inch reach advantage as well on Jamie Malarkey. So I can see him using that advantage. I mean, he has a really, really good jab, and he uses that jab just to keep his opponents at bay. And then he has his leg kicks too. So he's smart as a lengthy fighter. He knows how to use his body perfectly, right? Because sometimes you'll see big fighters, they'll try to get on the inside, they'll try to close the distance. But if you have the ability to keep your fighter on the outside, pick him apart from the outside, he does a good job with that. And as well, I mean, in the last two fights, he didn't even use his striking to win. He has his last two wins by rear naked choke, which is something that shows he trains out of Henjo Gracie or Carlson Gracie Jiu-Jitsu as well. So that tarantula ability, those long limbs, he just does a very good job of wrapping you up, kind of getting around you and kind of making it hard on you. Now, for Jamie Malarkey, I mean, he's one of these guys, you have to anticipate that he understands how to fight against length because he trains with Alexander Volkanovski. And Alexander Volkanovski is one of those guys that has always been fighting against guys that are longer than him. So in Jamie Malarkey's case right now, he's fighting a guy that's longer than him. But I think having somebody like Volko in his corner is just going to help him understand how to close that distance. And something that'll help him close that distance is his phenomenal head movement. He has one of the some of the best head movement that I see in that division. He keeps it going, and with doing that, he puts the pressure on. So he's able to dodge the shots coming out of the way, and he's able to use that to create some pressure. And it's very similar to what we see from Volkanovski, right? He'll pressure you, get you up against the cage, and then once you have nowhere to go, that's when he'll start firing those shots. And that's what we saw against somebody who else was fighting on the card, in Devontae Smith, right? He was able to pressure him throughout the entire fight, keep him on his back foot. And once he got up in the cage, he just started throwing some shots up against the guard. And then he was able to kind of go up to the body and drop him down. Now, his leg kicks are pretty good as well, right? He has really heavy shots when he's attacking the guard, but he's also able to get some takedowns, right? That's the good part of him. In the Faraz Ziam fight, he was able to get 4 takedowns. The unfortunate thing was that the range of Ziam and the kickboxing just made it hard for him to get inside. So there's 2 ways this fight's going to go, right? Either Jalen Turner is going to do what Faraz did, pick him apart, keep him on the outside, not let him get inside, or Jamie Malarkey is going to actually be able to get inside, close in the distance, and make Jalen Turner fold under some of that pressure. Now, when it comes to picking, man, this was a really, really tough one. I'm going to have to go with Jamie Malarkey. I think he's starting to put some of the tools together. I understand that Jalen Turner has a great submission game off his back and working off of, every position. But I think Malarkey has an understanding of just how to work from top pressure and not get submitted. The wrestling versus submission thing is something that we always see, in the MMA realm. I think the wrestling will get the best of it this time. I think the top pressure will get the best of it. I could see this fight ending in a knockout, but I do more likely see it ending with Jamie Malarkey getting a decision win, just controlling Jalen Turner on the ground a little bit more. Any final thoughts on this one before we move on to the main card?
Yeah, I like that pick. I like that pick with Jamie Malarkey. One thing that he can get from being in Alexander Volkanovski's camp is the fact that he's undersized. Him training with Alexander Volkanovski makes him have the ability of fighting long as a short fighter. What I mean by that is you see how Alexander Volkanovski fight. He doesn't fight like a short fighter. He likes to gauge distance and he likes to, pick people apart from the outside. And that's very interesting in terms of, kind of the metric of things. Usually short fighters, you want to close the distance and kind of close the gap so that way you can, utilize, your reach. Your reach is not your advantage. But I think with that, I think that if Jamie Malarkey is able to kind of gauge different distance and kind of pick apart that lead, like kind of how similar to Alexander Volkanovski does, he could get it done.
Yeah, he definitely could get it done. And then we could also see Jalen Turner just picking him apart from distance and getting a knockout win, right? So this is a tough one to call. I think this is one of the more close fights of the night. But I'm going to go ahead. I think Jamie Malarkey gets it done. I do think he has the skills, and I think we see him get it done. So, my man, with that being done, we are done with the preliminary card.
And First time ever we did prelims.
And I think we did pretty well. So not just bad. Looking back on some of the picks for the prelims, just to run over for you guys, I'm taking Jamie Malarkey over Jalen Turner. I believe you're taking Mirna Rodriguez over Yan Johnathan.
Yes.
Okay, we got that. You're also taking Kennedy and Zechuku over Nikolay Negumereanu. I'm taking Maria Agapova over Mirna Moroz. I'm taking Umar Nurmagomedov over Brian Boom Kelleher, and you're taking Tagir Ullan Becca over Tim Elliott. Now, my man, let's get into the main card. For somebody who hasn't been watching us before, the way we do the main card, he takes one corner, I take the other corner. We give you guys a path to victory for both guys, and then we give you guys a collective pick at the end. So let's get off to this main card, and Of go ahead and start it off because I got one of the more easy guys to break down. I got Greg Hardy, right? And Greg Hardy is kind of the most run-of-the-mill heavyweight you can get, right? He's a guy that's going to gas out when it gets to the second and third round. You might see him use an inhaler. He's a guy that will rush in a little too often and will get caught coming in after he hosts his opponent. Something like what we saw against Tai Tuivasa, or maybe even on the higher levels, what Stipe did to Francis, right? He thought he had him hurt, stepped in, and that was it, right? Lights out. Greg Hardy I do want to give him a little bit of credit because he has improved from when he first started, right? When he first started, he was just a raw athlete looking to kind of use that athleticism to work in here. Now he's becoming a little more calculated. He has, a little bit, emphasize on that, a little bit of a ground game, right? He's able to kind of, push up on you, do a little bit of work, but the skills aren't really polished, right? He leaves a lot of holes on the in-between. He has the power shots, right? He has the ability to knock you out. Nice left hook, nice right hand. But, that's all you're really going to get from him. You're not going to get many combination thrown. You'll just try to see him, hope for you kind of closing on that distance and work on him, trying to get that big strike to put you down. Now, my man Johan, what did you see from Sergey Spivak?
So with Sergey Spivak, I saw something that could really, exploit Greg Hardy, and it's the fact that Sergey Spivak can fight on the ground. Greg Hardy cannot. I've seen it with Marcin Tybura. He cannot, when he's on his back, he cannot fight on his ground. So, but one thing he does is his nickname is the polar bear. He fights like a polar bear. I'm telling you that right now. The way that he takes people down, it's not even like very technical or anything like that. It's very brute force and strength. But that's kind of what you need against Greg Hardy. You need to kind of out-strength him in terms of the grappling aspect because Greg Hardy does not have a good gas tank. He's still working on it. Greg Hardy is a work in progress. Sergey Spivak is not. And I think that if he's able to kind of bring Greg Hardy down, he'll wear him down kind of like Tybura did against Greg Hardy and kind of just get the stoppage there. But he can also – one thing that he can also do, because let's say Greg Hardy does defend these takedowns. Spivak is good in the clinch. And he's very fast in the clinch. He's not fast in other aspects of his stand-up game, But in the clinch, his timing's very good and his reaction time's, spot on. That's one of the stronger parts of his game. When he's in the clinch, in a split second, you can see uppercuts, you can see knees to the chest. He's not as flexible as other heavyweights, but in the clinch, he's able to, get in that range. And I think that if Greg Hardy is not, prepared for the clinch work of Spivak, it's going to be a long night, because Spivak, a lot of his finishes come either in the clinch or coming off the clinch, where he's right off the clinch, he'll hit like a lead right hand or a left hook, and it's done. So if my keys to victory for Spivak, take him to the ground, because take him to the ground, because you can exploit the stand-up of Greg Hardy, because Greg Hardy still fights punches from his hips, which again in the UFC, the worst thing you can do is punch from your hips. But take him to the ground, wear him down, and if he wants to get up, go into the clinch, because Greg Hardy is going to be a fish out of water in the clinch, especially if he's getting attacked in the clinch. So I say take him to the ground, wear him down, and dominate in the clinch game.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect path to victory. I mean, you always want to go with the easiest path, right? You want to exploit your opponent's weaknesses, and when your strengths are his weaknesses, that just makes it a lot better. Now, when it comes to the keys for Greg Hardy, I think he's just going to have to not be so flat-footed. I think he's just going to have to try to be a little more mobile and a little more calculated, right? Not rush in so much and keep everything in front of him. Just don't try to go and do too many things at one time. I think something else that he's going to have to focus on doing is just keeping his back away from the cage. We know that, when he tends to get tired, sometimes he'll just start backing up. We saw against the Johan De Castro fight that sometimes he will get clipped too, backing up. But if he's able to put the front pressure, at least keep his opponent backing up, Spivak won't be able to shoot from his takedowns from the back foot as efficiently as he would from the front foot. Now, if Greg Hardy has been doing any semblance of takedown defense training, he knows that if he's able to back Spivak up, the takedowns won't be quite as effective. So I think keeping his back away from the fence and keeping Spivak on the back foot is going to be one of his keys. That being said, when it comes to the picks, and I'll start us off on this one, I'm going to go with Spivak. I just think he's too diverse for Greg Hardy. I think the skills, there's too much MMA for Greg Hardy there. I think it's a little too deep for him. I think that it's a little more of a thin matchup. It was just a straight up ground game without the standing game or without the clinch game. He might be able to handle it. But Spivak, like you said, has a little bit of skills on the feet, and he does good, solid work in the clinch. And this might be a boring fight where Spivak just pushes up against him, not get him on the ground, land some clinch work, land some knees. But I think the dirty boxing will play a good part of it as well, and the punches that he's able to land in the clinch. So I'm going to go with Sergey Spivak. Where are you on this one?
Say what you want about Greg Hardy, but I am not going with him. I'm going with Sergey Spivak. Again, I think that if he's able to, successfully take Greg Hardy down, it's pretty much game over for Greg Hardy. I think that Spivak will able to be smothering him. Again, I don't think he has the same level of ground game that Tybura had, but I think he has a higher level to where Greg Hardy will not be able to neutralize it. And even if he does, Greg Hardy will not have the clinch game to be able to to kind of avoid that as well. So I'm going to go with Spivak on this one too.
Yeah, it's in my opinion, it's one of the easier picks for the night. But let's get on to one that's a little more exciting. I think this is one of the more exciting fights of the night. This could end up potentially one of the fight of the nights, or just give you a performance bonus, because both of these fighters are such exciting fighters. Now, we have the Cowboy Alex Oliveira, taking on Kevin Holland. And looking at this fight, before we get into the breakdowns, Alex Oliveira, he fights very lengthy. He fights very long. Kevin Holland still has a 3-inch height advantage on him. Like, he's still the longer fighter in this matchup, and I think that's going to be an interesting one. So I'll let you get breaking down into it. I'll let you start with Kevin Holland, because he is one of my favorite fighters. So break down what you saw from him, and let me know what you think his keys to victory are.
Hey man, this is his welterweight debut. He is taking his talents to 170, like he said. Kevin Holland is an exciting fighter. He's already said he loves to put on exciting bouts. Whether it's a good game plan or not, he's going to do his best to either, give the crowd what they want or get a performance bonus. So one thing he does is he's I think he definitely has the advantage on the feet. I mean, he is the lengthier fighter, and he's able to use that length to either counterpunch or be the aggressor. He can be both. I granted his counterpunching is aggressive, but that's how he is. He's an aggressive fighter. But one thing I love about Kevin Holland is that he likes to put his lead hand and he likes to grab the lead hand of his opponent. And oh my gosh, Cain Velasquez is facing 10 charges. My bad. I just got the alert. Oh my god. Oh my gosh, my bad. That was
Free Cain Velasquez.
Free Cain Velasquez. But with Holland, he likes to grab the lead hand of his opponent. And what that does is kind of eliminate one aspect or one strategy that the opponent has. Kind of similar to how Conor McGregor used to fight. And what that can do is no matter what, the only option that could to kind of free that lead hand is for the opponent to kind of use an action with their backhand. And what that does for Kevin Holland is that helps him, kind of calculate a counterpunch. And Kevin Holland has such reach that whatever distance he's at, he's able to kind of connect at the end of his strike. And that's something that he's really good at. And that's something that kind of helped him get that 5-fight winning streak in 2020. Now, what didn't help him in 2021 was his takedown defense. Again, when he's fighting a stronger fighter or someone who has a higher level of grappling or puts more pressure, you see Kevin Holland kind of falter in terms of, kind of avoiding takedowns. But granted, Kevin Holland does have a solid ground game, and solid. He has, I would say, average takedown defense, because we've seen that against high level fighters, it's not the best. But at the end of the day, Alex Oliveira is on a losing streak. Granted, he is the better grappler, but I think that if Kevin Holland is able to kind of neutralize the takedowns and neutralize kind of the grappling, he does. I know that this is his welterweight debut, and he might be depleted, or some physical attributes might be depleted on Saturday. But on paper, he does have the strength advantage, and he does have the reach advantage and stuff like that. If you're able to kind of pick him apart and kind of be the aggressor, kind of put Alex Oliveira on the back foot, it's going to be a long night. So my keys to victory: put the pressure on, make it an exciting fight. That's when Kevin Holland is at his best, is when fights are exciting. Because if you saw in his last two fights, weren't really exciting. He couldn't really do much. So he has to be able to get his offense off first. That's how he starts getting in a groove. He was never able to get in a groove against Derek Brunson or Marvin Vettori, because Marvin Vettori and Derek Brunson had the blueprint. Back Kevin Holland up against the cage and take him down, because what you do is you neutralize his stand-up. And once you neutralize it at first, it's very hard for Kevin Holland to kind of get it going through the later rounds. So he has to push out the pressure, get his game plan going first, and also, just avoid the takedown. You already know what was wrong. You already know why you lost. Just avoid the takedown against Alex Oliveira, and you'll be good.
Yeah, man, I think that's a perfect game plan for him. I think he's coming in with a little more experience. We have to understand that when he was going into that Kyle Dawkins fight, he was going in there fully prepared for the takedowns, fully prepared for all of that. And unfortunately, the clash of heads is what put him down for that fight. And we weren't able to see the skills that he built up for that fight. But fortunately, now he's going to be able to showcase that, plus everything he got from this camp in this Alex Oliveira camp, and now, or in this Alex Oliveira fight. Now, for Oliveira, right, he's a very awkward style fighter. He's not one of your traditional, he'll keep your tight guard, he'll box you to death. He keeps everything out. He kind of flows his hands back and forth. He'll wave the backhand while he's popping you with his jab. But it's very awkward, and it reminds me of who we saw recently. It's kind of a little Bobby Green-esque, right? Because he keeps his hands down, and he'll just kind of throw the pop shots from the hip. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. And as of recently, it hasn't been working quite as much, because he has been, he's a little older in his career now, right? He's been in the UFC for, I think, 7 years? Yeah, 2015. First fight against Gilbert Burns. Wow, look at that. 7 years for Alex Oliveira. So he is on the back end. He has been taking a little bit of damage, but he's still one of the more well-rounded fighters. I mean, this is a guy that can take it pretty much anywhere and finish you pretty much anywhere. But what he likes to do is when he starts off, he'll dance around the cage and he'll work off his back foot, and he'll wait for you to kind of close that distance, and then he'll kind of just turn you around, and then all of a sudden you're backed up against the cage, and you were just wondering, hey, I was chasing this guy with his back against the cage. But he just does a good job of just turning the fight around and getting your back against the cage once you close that distance. That's something that I think we could see in this fight, because he has the little bit of a lower center of gravity. If he's able to kind of get the hips of Kevin Holland, push him up against the cage, might be a little something that might be tough for Kevin to deal with. He's great in the clinch. I mean, this is somebody who's good he'll grab you, he'll knee you in the thigh, he'll throw some nice little elbows in there. But he just works in the clinch. He's somebody that will keep it busy. He doesn't keep it boring. He doesn't chase takedowns only. He chases takedowns while striking with you, right? He'll make sure he's peppering you with shots. That way you're thinking about the shots, thinking about the shots, thinking about the shots. Boom, the takedown comes. So he does a very good job of just mixing it all up. Where he falls short is just sometimes he seems to gas himself out, right? He'll throw these spinning kicks. He'll throw these wild attacks. And that's what makes Alex Oliveira. That's what makes him exciting and kind of a crowd favorite, right? But he just tends to wear himself out. And that gas tank has just been a little bit more, or gotten a little less as he's continued. I mean, he's lost 6 of his last 8 fights, and it's looking like to be 7 of his last 9. So it's kind of going to be adding up for him. And I think the keys for him is he's just going to have to close the distance, right? Kevin Holland is coming in with the reach advantage. So if Oliveira wants to win this fight, he's going to have to make sure that he's just not dancing around too much, that he's trying to really engage and close the distance. I think the clinch work is going to be absolutely key for him. I think Kevin's defense from taking him down is going to be very, very good. I don't think he'll get taken down very much in this fight, but I think Oliveira will be able just to pressure up against him, get the knees in the clinch, work him on the body, and just get some clinch control time, so that way he has some of that time in the judge's eyes. Now, what I think he's also going to have to do is not just fight with his hands down. I mean, Kevin is a sniper, right? He's going to have to make sure that he works with his hands up. And we saw in the Mike Perry fight, which has been a little while ago, that he gets caught coming in sometimes, right? He leaves his hands down, so when he's coming in to engage, boom, he'll get caught in. And Holland is such a sniper. He might be that guy to do that to you. Now, getting into the picks, I picked the last one. I'll let you go ahead and start with this one, man. Who do you think gets it done, and what's your pick by?
I'm going with my boy, Kevin Holland. He's going to be back on the win column. Far too long that he's been away from that. You know, it's crazy to think that his last win was in 2020. That's crazy to me. But I think he'll be back in the win column. I think he'll make an impressive debut at welterweight. One, because I think that overall, at this point in their careers, Kevin Holland is the better fighter. But another thing is, Alex Oliveira is used to being the longer fighter in his fights. So how is he? It's going to be hard for him to adjust to kind of being the shorter fighter and kind of closing distance. And you already said that he's susceptible when he comes in to getting caught. So that might be, detrimental to him, because Kevin Holland's biggest strength is when people are coming in chaos, he's able to counterpunch. We've seen it against Joaquin Buckley and stuff like that. Kevin Holland can fight off his back foot as well, and Kevin Holland can counter off his back foot. And I think that Kevin Holland can do that if Alex Oliveira is trying to close the distance.
Yeah, man. I think that's going to be something that we could really see as well. But let's move on to this one, because I think this is going to be a very, very exciting fight. I mean, Bryce Mitchell, Jimmy Flick was only in the UFC. I don't think he actually ever debuted. But he was in the UFC for like 2 minutes, and in his Dana White Contender Series fight, he was somebody that threw up submission after submission after submission. Bryce Mitchell kind of reminds me of him, and I know that's kind of a weird comparison for a guy that never really fought in the UFC, but Bryce Mitchell is such a unique submission artist, and he does such a good job of just getting the fight to you so quickly. And I think in this fight, he, coming against Edson Barboza famously previously had great takedown defense. I mean, when he was fighting Khabib Nurmagomedov, that was the big thing. It was not many people could take down Edson Barboza. I mean, obviously Khabib is Khabib. He'll take down everybody. But Bryce Mitchell is one of those guys that has been doing it to everybody. I mean, you look at his fight against Charles Rosa, and Charles Rosa is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he was throwing up submission after submission. I mean, he had him set up in 2 twisters. He had him set up almost for 2 arm triangles. He was just going submission after submission. And Bryce Mitchell, I mean, he just does a really good job with all of his fights as far as being aggressive on the ground, being exciting on the ground, and not just laying in one position. And he does a good job of transitioning very well, too, because if he doesn't get one submission, he'll transition very, very well from half guard to mount. It's probably one of the better half guard to mount transitions that I've seen in the UFC. But man, this is just a grappling, sensation. He is gonna get his camo shorts coming in for this UFC fight. But this is, like I said, it's a pretty easy, breakdown for Bryce Mitchell. He's gonna take you down. He's gonna get you to the ground. The striking is okay. He still has a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of work to do on the striking. But if he just gets a hold of you, man, it's pretty tough to get him off you. What did you see from Edson Barboza?
Well, one thing you know about Edson Barboza is that you're going to see a lot of kicks. He now has, I definitely think that he has the best kicks in the featherweight division, without a doubt. They're just so snappy and they're so powerful. And the one thing is, he throws it mostly with his back leg, and those back leg kicks are hard. You can ask Terry Edom, you can ask Kevin Lee, you can ask Shane Burgos. Shane Burgos took hella leg kicks. And one thing you'll notice is that he uses it to chop down his opponents. And not only that, but he also is very good at changing levels with his kick. He loves to kick to the body with his lead kick, but he also loves to kick to the head with his back leg. So it's like you have to be able to expect the unexpected from Edson Barboza, because he's so educated with his feet that it makes you think. And with Bryce Mitchell, who's primarily a stand-up fighter, he will have to close the distance very quickly against Edson, because if there's any distance between the two, he's going to get his lead leg picked apart. Another thing is that, he just has really good Muay Thai, one of the best Muay Thai guys in the division, like I said, and he's just very powerful and stuff like that. Ask Shane Burgos again, third round, dude got caught with, like, I think it was a 1-2, like a jab and a cross.
Yeah, it was a jab cross over the top. And,
it was a jab, and it was just snappy, and it was so unexpected because his jab is so fast and so like snappy that it kind of blinds the vision to and then the follow up is so fast
right after it.
It's so fast. His follow up is so fast. So that's one thing that Bryce Mitchell has to be aware of, going into this fight, is that Edson Barboza's reaction time is fast. One thing about him that is kind of been his Achilles heel is that he falters under pressure. Any kind of pressure, he kind of falters, and it kind of almost like his will's broken at that point. So that's kind of how I feel. His keys to victory, obviously, keep the fight on the feet, man. You don't want to be on the ground with Thug Nasty, even though you have a great jiu-jitsu game. It's Thug Nasty. Thug Nasty has a twister finish in the UFC. Remember that. He has a twister finish. You don't want to be on the ground with him. Another thing, pick apart the leg. Pick apart the leg, because then it's going to be hard for Bryce Mitchell to get takedowns. So pick apart the leg, keep the fight on the feet. You get a unanimous decision with victory.
So with that, my man, I'm taking Bryce Mitchell in this one. I do think that he's going to be able to close the distance. It's going to be the hardest matchup for him so far, without a doubt. But I think he's able to close the distance, and I think he's able to, like you said, make Edson just falter under the pressure. If he gets that first takedown, it's just going to make that second and third one easier for him once he starts wearing on the gas tank. Where are you on this one? Who do you think gets it done?
I'm going with Thug Nasty on this one. Bryce Mitchell, man. He's going to stay undefeated. I think he's going to submit Edson Barboza. I genuinely think so. I think that he will put the pressure on, and it'll just be too much for Edson going into the second round. Just the second round. I think that the constant pressure and the constant transitioning of Bryce Mitchell will kind of wear down Edson Barboza, and you can see a submission finish in the second round.
Yeah, man, I'm right there with you. I think that second round finish is a pretty good pick for that one. Now, with this one, we know where the fight fall apart, so we're going to give you just like a little bit of a quick preview on this one. RDA versus Renato Moicano. Moicano getting a very, very good matchup. I mean, he just stepped up a weight class, right? He was able to get a couple wins under his belt, and he's just looking pretty good. He has a pretty solid all-around game. But RDA, man, I think this is going to be a tough matchup, because you have a guy in RDA who's, fought between 155 and 170 versus a guy that fought at 145 and 155. So the size matchup there is going to be a little tough for me. I think RDA gets it done on this one, man. Who do you think gets it done? And then what did you see for this preview?
I think RDA is going to get it done. I think that just being in, kind of going on 4 days short notice is going to be very difficult for any fighter, let alone Renato Moicano. Rafael dos Anjos, I think they're not as even as they are on the feet, but I think Rafael dos Anjos has the slight advantage on the feet. One thing he does very well is counterpunch, especially in close proximity. And one thing that we've seen Renato Moicano kind of falter in is that close distance, striking. We've seen it against Jose Aldo and the Korean Zombie, where when he's in close distance, he's not as aware and kind of alert, in terms of looking for strikes, and he might get caught with a counter if he's in close proximities with Rafael dos Anjos.
Yeah, man. It's going to be a very close fight. I think Moicano will make it a little more interesting than most people anticipate, but I think RDA gets it done.
Right.
Now, my man, it's time for the main event of the evening. We have Jorge Gamebred Masvidal taking on Colby Chaos Covington. Let's break it down for you right now. Let's get into this main event. I'm going to go ahead and start off with Jorge Masvidal. Like I said, three-piece combo originated from the man, serving up the combination with the buffet to Leon Edwards himself. But, man, if you look at Jorge Masvidal, the first thing you're going to notice with him is just his hand speed, right? His hand speed, probably the best in that 170-pound division, and his hooks are absolutely nasty as well, right? He does a very good job just keeping the shots very quick, pulling the shots back up to his head really fast, too. What I like from seeing with Jorge Masvidal when it comes to this Colby Covington matchup, I think he just does a very good job of staying very movement heavy, right? He stays very lateral. He makes sure that his hips are sprawled. And I think training in ATT, having that time working with Colby, I think that's going to be something that's going to play to his advantage. Now, the one thing that the knock on him is we saw in the fights against Usman, right? And obviously Usman could very well end up being the greatest welterweight of all time when it's all said and done. But we saw that could be, right? But we saw that the wrestling of Usman helped set up the striking for him. And Colby has that same thing, right? I'm sure that Masvidal is going to be very, very wary of the pressure, high cardio, high pace that Colby Covington is going to press. And he's going to be ready to try to, drop to his hips, try to push that head down, and try to come back up and, try to sprawl his hips. If he does that too much, and if Colby is able to fake the shot and come over the top, I think that's something that can kind of hurt Jorge as well. The only thing is Colby doesn't have the same power that Kamaru Usman has. So it might not hurt him quite as much, but I think that might be something that we have to watch out for. Now, when it comes to the keys to victory for Jorge Masvidal, obviously he's going to have to keep the fight standing. And I think his best odds for the fight is ending it within the first couple of rounds. I think, for him, if fights go later, Colby is eventually going to get those takedowns, right? It's just a matter of time with him because the way that Colby fights, it's pressure, and it's just relentless. It's nonstop. It's like he says, it's chaos, right? For Masvidal, he's going to have to kind of go in there and understand that pressure is going to be coming at him, and he's going to have to catch Colby coming in. I think he's going to have to do a good job, maybe employing that knee, right? Not in the flying knee style, but keep that knee up the middle. Because we saw in some of Colby fights that he just kind of goes and he drags you down, right? He doesn't necessarily just go and get into your hips or go for the single, which he does, right? But sometimes when he feels uncomfortable, he'll just shoot, leaving his head right down the middle. I think that knee could be timed, and with somebody that's practiced so much with him, it's a very, very interesting matchup, man. Talk to me about what you saw from Colby Covington tape, and then you can go ahead and you can start us off with the picks.
Yes, so Colby Covington is the second best wrestler in the welterweight division. He is the second best wrestler, and it's kind of close because he is, what he does with his wrestling is something that, I've never seen before, is that he's able to, it's a way where he's able to sets up his improving volume strikes with his wrestling. And the best thing about Colby Covington's game is that it makes the opponent think. And in terms of thinking, I mean overthinking, because now you have to worry about, not the dangers of his striking, but the amount that Colby throws. Because Colby, when he was at ATT, not at MMA Masters, but we'll talk about that in a second. When he was at ATT, he's known as a very high volume striker. You saw with Robbie Lawler, he broke a record, with the most strikes thrown in a 5-round fight. He likes to keep active, and that's one thing he has to do against Jorge Masvidal is keep active, because if he gives any time for Jorge Masvidal to kind of set up any kind of strike or any kind of combination, it could be bad for Colby, because we saw against Kamaru Usman, he got knocked down twice, and you don't want to be knocked down by by Jorge because I think Jorge is the more powerful striker and the more effective striker than Kamaru Usman. So imagine if you get caught by Jorge. Another thing is, again, his wrestling. It's something that is so constant and such a constant pressure for his opponents. He likes to he can get the takedown off the cage, but he can get the takedown on the cage as well. And he makes every fighter fight for to get up on the feet. But the problem is fighters cannot get up on their feet with Colby. They can, and the thing about Colby is that Colby likes to let fighters try to defend and kind of give them hope of sprawling, but then he just takes them down again. And what that does, it exerts more energy. And one thing that Colby has to do in this key to victory, obviously, keep it on the ground and keep this fight past the third round, because 4 and 5 is probably going to be his to his advantage. But one thing he has to do, Jorge Masvidal loves to set up. He, like, when you see any kicks, when you see any punch, you can see it not from a mile away, but you can almost anticipate it because he loads up on it. He loves to load up in every strike. Once you see that fact, it's like it has to be perfect timing. Once Colby sees Jorge loading up, whether it's from the top or if he's level changing at the bottom, start either closing the distance or shooting. If he's loading up on his hands, shoot. If he's loading up on his feet, close that distance, try to get into clinch work. That's one thing that Colby has to do, is kind of anticipate the reaction time and close that distance, because Colby's game is best suited for close distance fighting. Another thing is you need to not fight like how you did on the feet against Kamaru Usman, because your striking was not good. I don't know what you think you are, but you're not up. Your hands are not one of the hardest in the welterweight division. You were swinging for defenses. You need to go back to volume punching, because volume punching is what got you to the dance, not power shots. And then you're going to exert more energy, and it's going to falter your wrestling.
Yeah, man. He's, like you said, he's just gonna have to stick to what he's good at, right? He's gonna have to make sure that Jorge doesn't get in his head, doesn't make him stand up and bang, right? Colby, you're good at one thing. You're good at putting on the pressure. You're good at wrestling. Take the fight down to the ground, and I think that's how he gets it done, man. I think Colby's smart enough, hopefully. Yeah, I don't know, but but I think he has the fight IQ enough to take the fight down to the ground. If I had to take a betting pick, I'm gonna take Colby Covington. As much as I love Jorge Masvidal, where are you on this one? Let's close this show out, baby.
Going with Colby Covington as well. Man, it's hard. It's hard because I can see Jorge getting the finish in the first round. I definitely can see that, because the way that Colby fights, I mean, especially in the last fight, he was kind of unintentionally going forward. And if he unintentionally goes forward against Jorge, he's gonna get slapped. I guarantee that. But I think that he's gonna adjust to what he did wrong against Kamaru, and kind of that instinct that he knows that he is better on the wrestling than Jorge. He's won so many wrestling exchanges when they're at ATT. I think that will play an advantage. I think he'll wear him down, and it might be a boring fight, but who knows?
Hey, who knows? This could still be exciting. The card is very loaded. We took all the time. We covered the entire main card, the entire main prelims, and a couple of those early prelims for you. And we want to thank everybody for checking us out. We got 6 people in right now. Thank you, guys. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if you're not already. Thanks to my boy Johan for joining me and giving us a beautiful preview to all his fights. And for myself, 3Piece thank you for checking out the preview show on the 3Piece Combo MMA Show. Thank you guys again, and we'll see you guys after the fight.